The battlefield was silent now, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the kind that lingered after screams had faded and engines had burned out. Commander Vera floated in the dim cockpit of her warship, her hands gripping the cold controls though the fight was over. Outside, the stars were scattered like broken glass, their light flickering over the shattered remains of her fleet. There was no movement, no friendly signal returning her call. Only the soft crackle of dying power lines and the slow drip of coolant on the metal floor. The seat beside her was empty. Only hours ago, it had been filled by Kaler, her partner in war, her companion in the dark. His laughter had filled this ship. His voice had been the anchor that kept her steady when the Veil swarm came. Now he was gone. There was no body to bury, only a flash of light that had swallowed him when the enemy ambushed their patrol. Vera had barely escaped with her life. She stared at the hollow space next to her, the seat straps torn and hanging loose. The cockpit smelled like smoke and scorched circuits. Somewhere in the distance, a distress beacon still blinked, but she did not answer it. Her heart was heavier than the ship itself, and her mind replayed the last moment over and over. Kaler shouting for her to eject, his hand slamming the override as the explosion tore through the rear section. His sacrifice had saved her, but it felt like a cruel exchange. She wanted to hate the enemy for taking him, yet a whisper of doubt crept in. How did they know their route? How did they strike so precisely? When her warship finally limped back to the fleet station, the hangar lights were dim and cold. The mechanics did not meet her eyes as they pulled the wreckage into its berth. Officers in dark uniforms spoke in low tones, their faces too calm for the loss the fleet had suffered. She expected a moment to grieve, a brief pause before being thrown into another mission. Instead, they handed her a datapad. Orders. A new assignment. A new partner. A human. Vera's claws tightened on the edges of the datapad as she read the name, Ethan Cross. From Earth. A species known for their stubbornness and strange courage. They were new to this war, barely trusted by the command. To replace Kaler with one of them felt like an insult. Her chest burned with anger, but the orders were sealed. She had no choice. When Ethan finally stepped into the briefing chamber, he carried himself like a soldier who had seen too much and slept too little. His uniform was simple, his expression calm, his eyes sharp. He saluted her with a human gesture and said nothing more than, "Ready to fly, Commander." His voice was steady, almost too steady, as if he already expected her hate. She turned away from him, her long tail flicking once across the floor, a silent warning. "You will not replace him," she said coldly. "You will sit in that seat, you will follow my orders, and when this war is over, you will leave. Do not speak his name." Ethan nodded once. Understood. There was no anger in his face, only something that looked like patience, or maybe a hidden resolve. Their mission was given within hours, reconnaissance into the shadowed lanes of the Veil Swarm's territory. The enemy had been silent for days, their movements unreadable, their weapons leaving nothing but husks behind. Command wanted eyes in the dark, and Vera's ship, barely repaired, was sent as bait once again. She did not trust the timing. She did not trust the calm. The emptiness felt too deliberate. As they launched from the station, the stars stretched into long trails, and the void welcomed them like a predator waiting behind a door. The silence between her and Ethan was heavy, broken only by the hum of engines. He scanned the instruments with steady hands, making notes, checking signals, saying little. Vera watched him from the corner of her eye, looking for a flaw, a crack, a moment to prove that humans were as clumsy as she believed. But he did not flinch when the sensors flickered, and he did not complain when the temperature dropped in the cabin. Hours passed as they drifted deeper into the dark sector. The starfield grew thinner, the radio waves quieter. Somewhere ahead, a faint pulse echoed, an unregistered signal, weak and irregular. It reminded Vera of a heartbeat, the kind you hear when your own is racing too fast. She frowned and adjusted the scope. The signal was moving. Ethan leaned closer to the console. "Is that ours?" "No," she said. Her voice was tight. "It's hunting." The ship's lights dimmed as if something was pulling the power away. The void outside seemed to ripple, the stars bending slightly like a reflection disturbed by a pebble. Vera's claws tightened on the throttle. She had felt this before, just before Kaler had died. Ethan's hand hovered over the weapon controls, his jaw tight now. "Commander, something is locking on us." And in that silent stretch of space, the emptiness stared back. The hum of the engines grew louder as the shadow in the void stretched across their sensors, but nothing solid appeared. It was as if the darkness itself had weight, like a deep ocean pressing on the fragile walls of their ship. Commander Vera kept her eyes on the screen, her clawed fingers resting near the manual override. Her tail was stiff, coiled against the seat. Across from her, Ethan Cross sat steady, his hands moving quickly over the controls with a precision that felt unnervingly calm. He did not speak much, only checked each system, as if he had been in this situation 100 times before. That calmness only irritated her more. He was human. They were supposed to panic when the void stared at them like this. They were supposed to break. The pulse ahead grew sharper, turning into a pattern. 3 beats, a pause, then 3 more. Not a distress call. Not any signal she recognized. The same rhythm that had haunted her dreams since Kaler died. Her chest tightened. She glanced at Ethan, half expecting him to look confused or scared. But instead his brow furrowed slightly, and his fingers hovered over the thruster controls. "You've heard this before, haven't you?" he said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "That rhythm. It's in their attacks. I read the report from your last mission. The one they tried to keep off the record." Her claws scraped lightly against the console. "That report is classified." "And yet I was assigned to you," he said, not looking away from the sensor feed. "Somebody wanted me here. Maybe to keep you alive. Or maybe to keep you quiet." Vera turned her gaze back to the dark screen. The idea made her stomach twist. It would not be the first time Command had used someone as bait, or as a shield to hide their failures. Kaler had trusted them, and now Kaler was gone. She clenched her jaw and pushed the throttle forward. "Keep your theories to yourself, human. Just do your job." For the next hour, the tension in the cockpit was thick enough to feel in the air. Ethan checked the long-range scanners and plotted alternate escape routes without asking her. His movements were precise, deliberate, as if every second he spent near her was a test he had already prepared for. The faint signal moved again, shifting behind them, always staying just out of reach. Then, without warning, the void cracked open. 3 Veil Swarm drones emerged from the dark, their shapes like twisted blades wrapped in silver mist. They moved with a strange, liquid grace, faster than most ships could react. Vera's hands flew to the weapons console, her claws activating the plasma turrets, but the drones had already split, circling them like predators. "Hold the line," she hissed, swinging the ship into a roll. Ethan's fingers slammed the secondary thrusters, the ship kicking sideways just as one of the drones fired a searing lance of light across their hull. The shields flared, alarms screamed, and the cockpit filled with the smell of burning insulation. "Your angle is too sharp," he said, teeth gritted. "They'll cut through our flank." "I know what I'm doing," she snapped, but in the next second another blast slammed into their rear stabilizer, spinning the ship violently. Sparks showered across the cockpit. Her vision blurred for a heartbeat, and she felt the same helpless drop in her stomach she had felt when Kaler was taken. Then Ethan moved. With one hand, he grabbed the manual control stick, overriding her path, and with the other, he punched the emergency venting system. The ship's portside thrusters flared bright and hot, venting superheated plasma into the space behind them. One of the drones dove straight into the sudden flare, its shell cracking open like glass under a hammer. The explosion tore a brief hole in the encirclement. Vera's claws tightened on the chair, fury boiling in her chest. "You disobeyed me." "I saved us," he shot back, voice sharp now. "Do you want to die here because you're too proud to change a plan?" She stared at him, her teeth bared, the heat of his words stinging more than the alarms. For a long moment, the only sound was the hiss of their damaged systems and the distant echoes of the remaining drones. One was gone, but two still stalked them. Ethan didn't wait for her answer. He punched in a new route, spinning the ship down into a dense field of debris, broken satellites and dead frigates drifting like ghosts. The drones hesitated at the edge of the field. Their movements were smooth, but cautious now, as if they feared losing their prey in the metallic maze. Vera followed the path with reluctant precision, her anger cooling into something heavier. She hated that his maneuver had worked. She hated that his calm was not a mask of arrogance but a shield of experience. Humans were reckless, yes, but they survived. Somehow, they always survived. When the threat faded from the sensors, the silence returned, thicker than before. Vera turned to him slowly. "You think because you saved this ship once, you've proven yourself?" "No," he said, eyes still on the scanners. "I think I just kept us alive long enough for you to see that I'm not here to replace him. I'm here because someone sent me, and I don't think they told either of us the truth." His words settled in the air like cold metal. Vera looked at him for a long moment, then back at the empty seat beside her where Kaler once sat. The ghost of her partner still lingered there, but now it felt as if the void had shifted, making space for something else, something she did not trust, but could no longer ignore. Outside, the dark sector was quiet again. Too quiet. And somewhere beyond the drifting wreckage, the pulse began to echo once more, steady and patient, like a hunter waiting for its prey to step into the open. The dark field of drifting wreckage stretched on endlessly, each shard of twisted metal casting thin shadows against the cold glow of distant stars. Commander Vera guided the warship with slow, deliberate motions, her claws never far from the manual thrusters. Beside her, Ethan Cross sat silent, his eyes fixed on the fading traces of the enemy drones. The quiet should have been a relief, but it felt heavier than the battle itself. Every fragment of wreckage whispered of something lost. Every flicker of dying light reminded her of the seat that remained empty before he came aboard. She hated that her mind kept going back to that moment, when he seized the controls and made the ship dance through fire as though it were his own. He had acted without hesitation, without waiting for her command. It should have enraged her, and it did, but under that anger was a thin, unwelcome truth: his actions saved them, and that made the silence between them all the more unbearable. The sensors pulsed faintly, scanning the debris field for signs of pursuit. The rhythm that haunted her dreams was gone for now, but she knew it would return. It always did. The Veil Swarm did not give up its prey so easily. She stole a glance at Ethan. His posture was relaxed, but his jaw was tight, the muscle twitching near his temple as though he was holding something back. "You are too calm for a man who nearly died," she said finally, her voice low, eyes fixed ahead. His reply came after a pause. "You don't learn anything by panicking. You learn by surviving." "Is that what humans believe?" "That's what soldiers believe," he said. "Doesn't matter the species." Her claws traced the edge of the console. Kaler believed in orders, in loyalty. He trusted the fleet to protect its own. "And they sent him to die," Ethan said quietly, without looking at her. The words struck like a blade under her ribs. Her gaze snapped toward him, a sharp hiss escaping her throat. "You will not speak of him." "I'm not disrespecting him," Ethan said, his voice steady, though his fingers tightened on the console. "I'm saying the truth that you already know. That patrol route, those coordinates, they weren't random. Someone sent you there. Someone expected the swarm to hit you." She wanted to deny it, to throw his words back at him and bury that thought where it could not reach her. But the memory of that mission was too clear. The unusual path, the delayed reinforcements, the sudden silence from command when the attack came. She had tried to push it away with duty, with discipline, but it always crawled back at night, cold and whispering. "Why were you assigned to me?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. Ethan met her gaze now. "Because I asked too many questions," he said. "And because I survived things they didn't want reported. They told me I'd be filling a gap in your crew, that you needed a partner who could adapt. But they didn't tell me what really happened to him. They didn't tell me the mission was compromised before you even launched." Her claws dug small marks into the console. You think they sacrificed him? I think they sacrificed a lot of people, he said. And they sent me here to make sure you didn't start asking why. The words hung between them like a fracture line in the hull. She turned away, staring at the broken stars. Her people had fought this war for decades, believing the fleet was the shield between them and extinction. If that shield was cracked from within, if command was feeding them to the enemy for reasons unknown, then everything she had lost meant nothing. The faint pulse returned. It was softer this time, like a breath against the glass, but it set her fur on edge. The drones were out there, circling again. Hunting. Ethan reached for the comm switch. We should send a coded burst. Let them know we're not alone out here. She shook her head. No. If they wanted us to survive, they would have sent help by now. A signal will only tell the swarm where to strike. And what if the swarm already knows? He said. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet frustration beneath it, like steel beneath snow. She turned her gaze on him once more, studying his face. There was no mockery there, no sign of triumph. Only the look of someone carrying a truth too heavy to keep and too dangerous to speak. For the first time, she wondered if he hated this assignment as much as she did. The wreckage field began to thin. The stars beyond looked brighter now, though they offered no safety. Vera slowed the ship and let the silence stretch until it felt like another presence in the cockpit. You said they sent you to keep me quiet, she said at last. So why are you telling me this? Ethan's eyes stayed on the forward screen. Because out here, the only thing that keeps us alive is trust. And right now, I'm the only one you have. The words settled in her chest like a weight she could not lift. Trust. It had been easy once, when Kaler was beside her, his laugh echoing in the small space, his claws steady on the controls. Now it felt like a knife turned the wrong way, sharp and cold and pointed inward. Outside, the pulse quickened again, and the debris behind them began to drift, as if pulled by a tide they could not see. The wreckage field ended like a cliff, opening into a stretch of empty stars that felt wrong in their stillness. The void was not silent anymore. It had a low hum beneath it, too soft for the ears but strong enough to crawl along the bones. Commander Vera slowed the warship, letting it drift without heat or light, the hull plates groaning as the temperature dropped. Ethan Cross sat beside her, his eyes scanning the shifting readings, his hands steady despite the subtle tremor running through the cockpit. Something moved in that darkness, too far to see, too faint to name. The pulse was there again, the same rhythm that had haunted their path for hours. 3 beats, a pause, 3 more. Only now, the pattern was changing. Faster. Closer. They know where we are, Vera whispered, though no one had spoken but her. Ethan adjusted the sensors, his voice low. I think they've been guiding us here. The words made her claws curl against the console. Guiding. The thought coiled in her stomach like cold wire. Had this entire route been a path laid by the swarm? Or by command? Her people used to believe the swarm was only a horde of machines with alien will, but Kaler once told her something different. They were not just hunters. They were collectors. A faint glimmer appeared ahead, dull at first, then growing into a slow pulse of green light. It was a structure, half hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. Its shape was wrong, neither built nor grown, but something in between. The walls seemed to breathe, and a mist drifted from the cracks like cold breath. Vera's fur bristled. That's not a base. That's a hive. Ethan nodded slowly. And it's alive. The warship coasted closer, silent as a shadow. Their sensors flickered as if the hive were draining them. Inside, faint signatures appeared, energy readings shaped like nervous systems, pulsing like hearts. There were many. Some were small, faint, fading. Others were bright, too bright, burning in strange patterns that no living creature should make. Vera felt the cold crawl up her spine. Those are pilots, she said. Living ones. Ethan leaned in, reading the codes with a slow frown. Not just pilots. They're using them. Wiring their minds into the hive. That's how they track fleets. That's how they break ships before a battle even begins. Her claws clenched the seat. The image of Kaler flashed in her mind, his voice cut off mid-scream, his signal lost in the same strange rhythm. If the swarm had taken him, if they had turned him into one of these trapped minds, then his death had not been an end. It had been a beginning. She wanted to turn the ship and leave, to burn this place from her memory and call the fleet, but her orders rang in her head. Observe, do not engage, do not reveal position. The same orders that had killed him. Ethan spoke again, quieter this time. Do you see the pattern? All alien signatures. No humans. She turned to him sharply. What are you suggesting? They can't connect to us, he said. Humans. Maybe something in our minds, our signals, they can't use us. That's why they sent me. Not because I'm the best pilot, but because I can't be taken. The cockpit felt smaller with his words in the air. Vera's breath came shallow now. If that was true, then command had known. They had known the hive was here. They had known what the swarm was doing to their pilots. And they had sent her and Kaler straight into its reach, with a human kept in reserve for when the first one broke. Her claws scratched the armrest as a low growl built in her throat. They sacrificed him to learn this, she said. To confirm their theory. Ethan did not answer. He only checked the fuel levels and armed the silent beacon in case they needed to run. The hive shifted ahead of them, its walls peeling apart like petals. A swarm of silver drones spilled into the void, their lights flickering in the same 3-beat rhythm. The hum in the cockpit turned into a low vibration, rattling the glass. They're waking it up, Ethan said. We can't stay. Vera's hands flew across the controls. The engines powered with a reluctant hiss, the warship trembling as if the void itself was pulling it back. She turned the ship sharply, plotting a route through the dead moon's shadow, but the drones were already spreading out like a net. They know, she muttered. They always knew. Ethan reached for the auxiliary controls, his fingers moving fast. If we can get close to their core, I might be able to disrupt it. Force them to scatter. You'll never make it out alive. He met her gaze. There was no fear there, only resolve. Neither will you if we run. They'll track you. They'll track all of us. The words burned through her doubt like a slow blade. She wanted to hate him still, to call him reckless, arrogant, human. But the swarm was spreading, and the hum in the hull was rising, and she knew Kaler would not have hesitated. The first wave of drones struck. The shields flared, alarms screamed, and the dead moon lit up with the flash of their weapons. Vera threw the ship into a spiral, Ethan fired the countermeasures, and together they cut a narrow path into the dark. Behind them, the hive began to open wider, a deep green glow spilling out like the eye of something ancient finally awakening. The warship shuddered under the force of the drone's attack. Each strike rattled through the hull like a heartbeat made of iron. Sparks danced across the cockpit panels, casting thin shadows on Vera's tense face. The void outside was alive with silver streaks and green pulses from the hive behind them, the same hive that now glowed brighter, its walls peeling open like the jaws of a great predator. Commander Vera's claws moved quickly over the controls, weaving their damaged vessel through the rain of hostile fire. Beside her, Ethan Cross worked without pause, his hands a blur over the auxiliary systems, rerouting power, deploying countermeasures, and checking the reactor readouts with a steady focus that made the chaos around them seem quieter. Shields down to 30%, he called over the noise, his voice steady even as a fresh blast scraped the starboard wing. Divert engine output, Vera snapped. We need speed more than shields now. He obeyed without hesitation, and the ship leapt forward, skimming the shadowed side of the dead moon. Fragments of ancient rock and wreckage whipped past them, each piece spinning slowly in the dark like the bones of forgotten fleets. But the drones did not fall behind. They adapted, spreading out in a wide arc to trap them again. They're not just chasing, Ethan said. They're hurting us. Vera's ears flicked back, a low growl forming in her throat. Hurting us where? Back to the hive. The realization struck cold. This was not pursuit, It was a net closing in. Every maneuver she had made, every route she had plotted, had it been predicted? Had command sent them with no chance to escape? Her claws clenched the control stick, and for a moment she saw Kaler's face again, the flash of his sacrifice, the same pattern of traps closing in on him. "We can't outrun them," Ethan said, scanning the layout ahead. "Not with a ship this torn apart." "Then what?" Her voice was sharp, but her mind was already racing. His eyes shifted to the readings of the hive behind them. The green glow was growing, forming a thick pulse that rippled across the starfield. "Every signal out here comes from that thing. It's their brain. Their nest. If we kill it, we break the net." She stared at him. "You can't be serious. That thing is alive. It's feeding on minds. There are hundreds, maybe thousands, inside." He didn't flinch. "Then it's already worse than dead." Vera felt her chest tighten. His words were like a blade turned toward the only hope they had left. Destroy the hive. With what? Their ship was barely holding together. The fleet was too far, and command, if command even wanted them back, would not arrive in time. Ethan's hands moved across the console again, bringing up the reactor's fail-safe protocols. "There's a way. If we overload the drive and detonate it near their core, it will collapse the whole structure. Chain reaction. It won't erase the swarm, but it will blind them long enough for the fleet to regroup." She looked at him sharply. "That would destroy the ship. And everyone on it." He finally met her eyes, his gaze steady, the same quiet resolve she had seen in him since the first moment he stepped aboard. "Not everyone. Just the one who stays behind." The words hung in the air, heavier than the alarms still crying in the background. Vera's claws dug into the edge of her seat. "No. You think you can throw yourself into their nest and call it victory? You think this will undo what they've done?" "It's not about undoing it," Ethan said. "It's about stopping the next one. You know as well as I do, if we let this hive live, they'll take another patrol, another fleet. Maybe your whole homeworld next." She wanted to shout at him, to call him reckless, to tell him humans always sought glory through suicide missions, but the words would not come. Because part of her knew he was right. There was no other way, and every second they argued, the drones drew closer. The ship jolted as a fresh hit tore through their lower hull. Warning lights bled red across the cockpit. The reactor's temperature climbed. "Get me close enough to that opening," Ethan said. "I'll plant the overload. You take the ship out." Her throat tightened. She had sworn never to let another partner die in her place. And here he was, the human she had hated for daring to sit where Kaler once sat, willing to throw his life into the same fire. "No," she said, her voice lower now, almost a growl. "I'm not leaving anyone behind again." Ethan reached for the emergency harness, locking it across his chest. "This isn't a debate, Commander. It's a war. And sometimes war doesn't wait for our guilt to catch up." The drones surged ahead, cutting off their escape path. The hive's glow widened, its strange green light now casting sharp edges on the debris field. In that light, Vera saw the shadows of countless figures inside its walls, some still moving, some frozen forever. She wondered if Kaler was one of them. "Guide me in," Ethan said again. "We don't have much time." She stared at him, her claws trembling over the controls. Her mind screamed to fight him, to force another plan, but her instincts, the ones that had kept her alive this long, whispered that this was the only chance. Slowly, she turned the ship, aligning it with the jagged opening in the hive. The glow grew stronger, like an eye widening to welcome them in. "Ethan," she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. "If you do this, there will be no going back." He gave a small, tired smile. "Then let's make it count." The warship plunged toward the hive's heart as the swarm awakened in full, their drones screaming into formation, their rhythm now a roar that shook the void. The hive's walls closed around them like the throat of a living beast. Shadows curled along the green-lit tunnels as the warship drifted in, its engines burning low and angry. The drone swarm peeled away, leaving only a thick silence that pulsed like a heartbeat from the core. Commander Vera kept her claws locked on the controls, guiding the damaged vessel through the jagged opening. Her mind screamed to turn back, but her chest was hollow, her breath shallow, and the memory of Kaler's final scream burned behind her eyes. Ethan Cross stood beside her, strapping down the last of the overload charges to a portable core module. His hands moved steady, like this was just another mission, another day. But there was no escape plan on his console, no coordinates for a return jump, no hero's welcome waiting at the fleet. Only the hive, and the death waiting inside it. Once I set the charges, Ethan said quietly, you push full power to the drives. Don't look back. Don't wait. You sound sure you'll never leave this place, Vera growled, her voice low, rough. He met her eyes, and there was no fear in his. Just that same steady, stubborn fire she had seen from the moment he stepped aboard. I'm not here to leave, Commander. I'm here to make sure you do. The words struck deep, not because they were heroic, but because they were familiar. They were Kaler's words, long ago, before the mission that had stolen him from her. She hated that they sounded the same. She hated that this human, this fragile, stubborn creature, had taken the same place in her ship, and now, without asking, in her war. The ship jolted as the hive walls pulsed. Long threads of light began to snake along the interior, like veins awakening to the scent of blood. A low hum filled the cockpit, neither mechanical nor alive, but something in between, a mind stretching awake. They know we're here, Ethan said. And they're afraid. Vera stared at the opening ahead, a massive hollow chamber, the hive's heart. There, hanging like a grotesque jewel, was the core, thick, pulsating, wrapped in green latticework. Shadows writhed inside its surface. She saw faces there, twisted, silent, and one of them, maybe, was Kaler. Her claws trembled. If he's in there. He's gone, Ethan said softly. You don't free them by joining them. You free them by ending it. The hive's walls began to close. Drones swarmed in from the side tunnels, silent and precise, their bodies glinting like cold metal bones. Vera's instincts flared. Fight, flee, survive. She snapped the ship downward, skimming the edge of the glowing pit, while Ethan pulled open the bay door. The hiss of cold void swept in as he stepped onto the platform, core module in his arms, his boots magnetized to the trembling metal. Don't do this, she said, her voice sharp now, desperate. Not for me. Not for them. This isn't about you, Ethan replied, and his voice was calm, almost gentle. It's about everyone who hasn't been taken yet. The drones closed in, their green eyes burning in the dark. Ethan raised his rifle and fired, each shot echoing sharp and clean across the cavern. Sparks burst from their ranks, but more came, crawling along the walls like a rising tide. Go! He shouted. But Vera didn't. Her claws locked harder on the controls. She swung the warship into the path of the nearest swarm, ramming them aside, shredding their formation with a burst from the plasma cannons. Her heart thundered as the ship groaned in protest. You are not doing this alone, she growled. Ethan looked back, the glow of the hive washing his face pale. Vera! No! She snapped, her voice a snarl now, her fangs bared. I will not lose another partner to this thing. If we die together. But if we live, we both walk out. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Human and alien, predator and prey, soldier and soldier. And something shifted in the space between them. Trust, raw and unwilling, but real. Then give me the shot, Ethan said. She understood instantly. With a roar of engines, she pitched the warship forward, straight toward the core. Drones shattered against their hull, claws scraping, mandibles tearing, but the ship plunged on, closer and closer to the heart of the hive. Now! Ethan shouted. He hurled the core module forward. It struck the lattice, embedding deep, its lights flaring red. A low, rising hum filled the chamber, the overload arming. Hold tight. Vera slammed the controls, dragging the ship upward with every ounce of thrust the failing engines could give. The The hive walls writhed, the drones shrieking in silent fury, their formation breaking as the core began to pulse out of rhythm. The explosion came not as a single flash, but as a wave, a bright, soundless ripple that tore through the hive's veins, ripping the shadows apart, turning the green glow into a storm of burning white. The warship broke free of the hive's mouth just as the structure folded inward, collapsing like a dying star. The shockwave hurled them forward, their hull screaming as pieces of the swarm scattered into the void. For a long time, there was only silence. Alarms faded. The green glow was gone. The swarm was gone. Vera's claws trembled on the controls. Her eyes flicked to the co-pilot's seat. Ethan was there, breathing hard, burned along his arm, his armor cracked but his eyes alive. "You stayed," he said, a weak smile forming. "You didn't give me much of a choice," she muttered, her voice low. "Humans never do." He laughed, a rough sound, but real. "So, does this mean I'm off the hate list now?" She didn't answer right away. She stared at him, at the wreckage behind them, at the silence where 1,000 screams had been. Slowly, her claws loosened on the controls. "Don't make me regret it," she said. He leaned back, exhausted, the stars spinning slowly beyond the cracked glass. "Deal." The warship limped toward the dark stretch of space where the fleet would arrive soon. The war was not over. The swarm was not gone. But in that empty cockpit, for the first time in a long time, Commander Vera did not feel alone.